Hello, everybody. Welcome to another interview on the Art of Intervention Project Summit. And today we have a road warrior who's actually out on the road today, pulled over to have this interview. And Michael DeLeon with Steered Straight is really boots on the ground, you guys. So I want to hear all that you're doing, Michael. You're traveling around the country. You're seeing things from a perspective that a lot of us don't see. So thank you for literally taking some time to pull over and have a conversation today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So you do a lot of different things, but when people kind of say like, "Hey, Michael, who are you and what do you do?" How do you respond to that?
So my primary mission is prevention, right? I want to prevent kids from growing up to be me. Basically, a 45-year experience with drugs, alcohol, addiction, overdose, death, and recovery. I became addicted to drugs at the age of 11. So I understand that the only way we're going to stop our drug pandemic in America is to not, let it start. So we got to get to the kids. So I spent 12 years in prison and being a part of the Scared Straight program, Project Pride program that I began in prison, where inmates would go out to schools and talk to kids about how we got there in the first place to help them avoid the same path. When I got out of prison in 2007, I said that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I started Steered Straight, prevention. That's the key. That's really the only thing that's going to work. It wasn't easy picking up the phone and calling principals, good morning. I just got out of prison. I'd like to come talk to your children, and click, a lot of dial tones, but I didn't stop. And now I've become the #1 booked school presenter in America. I did 708 school presentations last year. So I know that that's the key. That's the biggest issue, getting to the kids. Throughout the process, I wanted to go back to the prisons and reach the men and women who were incarcerated, because if I could do it, they could do it. And I understand that I have to stop that revolving door. I stopped it for myself, and I know how to stop it. So I decided to volunteer and start going back into the prison system to reach these men and women. And the thing about it that ties into my prevention is 90% of every woman who's incarcerated, 80% of every man who's incarcerated is a parent. So who's also affected by that incarceration is their children. So now you have adverse childhood experiences on the kid, that trauma, that generational incarceration. If I can stop that revolving door, I can benefit kids also. So that became my mission, preventing kids from growing up to be me and going back and reaching into the men and women who are incarcerated to show them how I've done it. It might not work for you. It might not, different strokes for different folks. There's different pathways to recovery and freedom, but I want to share my pathway. And if that works for you, then fantastic. And maybe we could work together. So that's my mission. Along the way, I'm very passionate about documentaries and video. So I started making movies. I left my career when I decided to do this full time, and I made a documentary called Kids Are Dying. It was shot in 2012 when no one was even talking about a heroin epidemic. And I showed in 2012 what was going on with heroin across the country. It was really the first film, first documentary, first expose about what was really happening with urban and suburban mixture of addicts and drugs, and the extent of the death, where it all began with pharmaceutical opioids. And I put the movie out. I ended up doing 3 more movies. I have a 4th one coming out. And so through video, I've been able to show, the reality of it, but talk about the solutions. And along the way, filming these movies, I met a lot of people in recovery. So I would sit down with them and I would say, oh, how'd you find recovery? And I started putting their stories together. A lot of people talk about the war on drugs, right? It's a great talking point that people like to use, the war on drugs. There never, ever was a war on drugs. It's been a war on drug addicts. We never had a war on drugs. It was a war on drug addicts. So I decided, well, we need a new war, and we need a war on addiction. And we need an army of people that fight this war who better to fight the war than people who are in recovery? So I said, we need a recovery army. So I created a recoveryarmy.com. I leased a big tour bus and I wrapped it with stickers, and I would drive across the country, see the schools, go to the prisons, and then find people in recovery, sit down and tell their stories. And I created a platform called recoveryarmy.com where I'm sharing people's stories of recovery. And it's so honored to be able to share these stories. And literally every single day, I get a call or a message from a counselor or a parent or someone in recovery who say the stories have really impacted their life. Their counselors are using the stories to run group. And it's crazy. So preventing it from happening in the first place, trying to help the people who are in the grips of incarceration, besides the cemetery, the prison's the worst place, you could end up as a consequence of addiction, turning them around and then sharing the hope of recovery by capturing these stories. It's like the trifecta of addiction and recovery. And I'm never home. I'm actually in Virginia right now because we can't fund our operation to the level we need to. So my CPA told me I had to stop doing the pro bono work, stop going into the jails and the prisons. And I was like, you don't get it, do you? I can't stop doing it. What am I going to tell a rural school or a urban school, a Catholic school that has no budget or money? We can't bring our programs to their school. I can't say no. So he said, well, if you want to still do pro bono work, you've got to raise $100,000, which is basically the amount of loss you had last year, right? And I said, but we're a nonprofit. We don't have to make money. He says, but you can't lose that money. So you got to go out and raise $100,000. So my bright idea was to open up a thrift store, like, I got time on my hands, not really, but so we opened up a thrift store in Nashville, Tennessee, and it's booming. So now we're expanding it. I'm in Virginia recording 2 stories of recovery and picking up a whole load of donated stuff for the thrift store so I can fund our operation. So there's my mission. It's nuts. And I'm trying to bring everyone together, because people say it takes a village, and it does, but then people don't come together as the village, so that's what I'm trying to do.
Man, that is a lot right there, you guys. I mean, that's a lot to take in. And when you were talking about earlier, you visited, I was writing my note down here, 708 schools in 1 year. I do the calculations, and that's like 2 a day. And I know all the work that you do. And one thing that was going through my head was people need to support you. So I'm going to throw this out there because I'm a guy that will do that for people. But exactly what you just said, you guys, if you go to steeredstraight.org, can they donate money there if they want to support you? Because I want people to support you, because there are people that sit in their office on a daily basis and air conditioning and see 10 clients a day, which is great, but you're out there sweating your butt off doing this thing. So how can people really send you money online to support what you're doing?
Steeredstraight.org, and I appreciate it, but I mean, I hate to ask for help. I hate to ask people for money and support, but it's not for me. It's for the mission. Steeredstraight.org. We're a 501c3, so it's 100% tax deductible. And they can also donate. I mean, obviously, it's easier if they're closer in Tennessee or Virginia or Kentucky to donate to our stores. We're opening up a second store, but they could send it, but then that costs money shipping. But if they don't have the money to donate, they could donate the materials, and I'll go sell it to make the money, because this mission has to be funded. But It's a tax-deductible donation, 501c3, so steeredstraight.org.
Nice. Thanks. I'm glad you brought that up, because that wasn't like the general purpose of us having the conversation today, but we're there and people are listening. I want people to do that. So can you draw us in a little bit to maybe some of the conversations you've had with these teenagers in schools and what you hear from them that their big pain points are as a kid, especially with COVID these days?
Right. So before COVID even hit, we were at a 50-year high of suicide among adolescents. Never has suicide been this high in our country's history, and for every demographic. and ironically, people don't understand. African American males between the ages of 11 and 27 have never seen suicide rates as high as they are right now. I tell you, African American youth, you've never seen drug use this high, ever. Uh, Everywhere I go across the country, I visited 37 states in the last 3 months while COVID's going on. I didn't stop. I didn't sit at home. I don't socially distance. I'll wear a mask, if people want. But I haven't stopped. So I've been out there because everywhere across the country, schools are still working. They're not open, but administrators are in their schools because they're coordinating distance learning to kids. Many states are coordinating food distribution because some of these kids that are on free lunch and free breakfast, they wouldn't eat if they didn't have school. Since they don't have school, not too many people are thinking, how are these kids eating? Well, schools are feeding them still in many states. So I went out and developed a digital platform that I delivered to these schools all across the country. I dropped off materials at over 150 prisons in the last 3 months, so the inmates who are locked down could read. So I haven't stopped my mission. It hasn't stopped. But even before COVID, we were at a 50-year high of suicide. We were at a high of adolescent drug use. And I know there's so many people who believe the legalization of marijuana is such a great idea. I made a movie about it. It's not a great idea. Highest youth use state in America is the highest marijuana use state in America, which is Colorado. If you look at all your top states of youth use of marijuana, they're all the top legal states. Kids aren't supposed to be using marijuana, but when you legalize marijuana, you increase youth use of the drug. When you legalize drugs, you increase the drugs use, period. It's just anyone who disputes that, anyone who tells you that that's not true, has no idea what they're talking about. Legalizing drugs is not the answer. People who propose that theory don't understand 70% of all drug death are from legal regulated drugs. So to legalize and regulate illicit drugs makes no sense because you now expand the drug use. So when I saw COVID hit, we closed all the schools. In the beginning, we were thinking it was going to be a month, right? Now we're on the longest summer vacation adolescents have ever seen in history. And academic regression is happening, loss of connection and mentorship is happening, and isolation is happening. When people are home, they're fearful if they've got a job, they don't know what the future holds. Now you got people home, domestic violence is increasing. Alcohol use is up over 200% across the country. Overdose death rates are up in some states over 50%. Drug use is up. People say that China is not getting the drugs into the country because of COVID and the distribution channels. They don't know what they're talking about. Our illicit imports are up. Drug use is up, alcohol use is up, domestic violence is up, suicide is up. Calls to suicide helplines are up over 100%. All of this impacts the family and all of this impacts kids. So what do people do? They self-medicate. So our drug use is skyrocketing. Now you've got some states contemplating not bringing kids back to school this fall because of COVID. It's absolutely the wrong approach because the consequence and the collateral damage on kids, on families is going to be tenfold. These kids are anxious, and the community that's saying they want to help is the medical community and the psychiatrists. Oh, well, we'll just go through a telehealth interview and they prescribe the child Xanax or Klonopin or Ativan or some other benzodiazepine or an anxiety medication or a depression medication. Well, many of these doctors are not confronting the kids, asking them, now, are you using marijuana? So now you got a benzo and a THC in the developing adolescent brain. You got a recipe for disaster. We've got a massive, massive problem, and people aren't talking about it. And then you add the isolation, the racial division, the riots, and everything that's going across America. We're not processing all this madness for kids. I was talking to a family this morning. The mom is at her wit's end. The superstar kid with the 4.0 GPA the captain of the football team as a junior, right? Father's a cardiologist, mom's a stay-at-home mom, raised 3 kids before this one, and now he punches her in her face, right? Because he's going through the roof because of the isolation. But the doctor put him on Xanax. The doctor put him on another mood stabilizer. No one's asked the kid if he's dabbing, which is high concentrate THC marijuana. This kid's losing it, and the parents and the family doesn't know what to do. She had said, the world's going crazy. This country's going crazy. And now my kid's going crazy. If you look at the core of the problem, we've allowed the problem to take place. I promise America, our suicide rate's going to increase. Our adolescent drug use and suicide is going to increase. The pandemic that's going to really impact America is unfolding right now. And I see it everywhere I go. I was in Wisconsin, Montana, Utah. I was in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas. Today I'm in Virginia. Last week I was in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. I was in rural, I was in Amish community, I was in urban community. I see it everywhere. I see it everywhere, and it's gonna get worse. So we've got to wake up, and we've got to realize what's taking place, and we have to come together.
Yeah, thank you for giving us that picture, and it's a tough picture to think about. And when you think about like addiction and using drugs and alcohol and vaping and dabbing and everything that's going on out there, right? What do you feel like is kind of like maybe a core thing people are trying to fill?
Well, listen, I'll say it no matter where I am, God, and whoever you call God, call him that, her that, whatever you call God. I had a kid a couple weeks ago tell me the ocean is their God. They live in Florida and they find all their solace and peace at the beach, and they really feel the ocean is their God. I don't know how that ocean can, be the higher power. I know it's powerful. I don't know how it could restore you to sanity, the ocean, but if it does, fine. Spiritual principles, that's what we have to respect, the religious belief of all people. I'm a Christian. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. But God has to be a core of life. Your spiritual principles, you've got to find that spiritual principles. And then the other thing that we've really got to push and talk more about is purpose. We have to have that purpose in our lives. And too many people don't have that purpose. The thing that gets me through this, I take phone calls when I'm home from midnight till 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning for the National Suicide Helpline, right? And I will, real quick, I'll ask people to look at something. The National Suicide Helpline has been talking about going to a 3-digit phone number for years. And finally, we're at that stage. And Congress must pass, July of this year, 2020, Congress must pass this legislation. It's not a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. We don't need this, 10-digit phone number for suicide. We need a 3-digit phone number, 988. And that has to pass. We have to call your senator, write a note, write a letter, ask your congressman or senator, please pass this bill, 988. We need a 988 National Suicide Helpline number. But over the last 3 weeks, I've had 2 gentlemen kill themselves while they were on the phone with me. And I have a pastor friend that I talked to, and he asked me, how the hell do you deal with that? And I said, well, he didn't say hell, but how do you deal with that? And I said, I have this purpose. I had a 17-year-old girl talk about being sent to the garage to tell dad it was time for dinner by the mom, and dad's hanging from a rafter in the garage. And she's talked to me for 4 hours on the phone. I've had girls and boys come up to me and talk about the sexual abuse that they're going through at that very moment. I've gone into prisons and I've gotten letters from inmates that'll rip your heart apart. I had a 35-year-old girl in our office overdose and die, and her sister brought her diary in to show me how she wrote in her diary, I wish I could have told Michael that I relapsed and asked him for help, but I couldn't. She died the night she wrote that in her diary. I've been to 200, Mary, that was her, 221 funerals. I heard yesterday from Upper Dauphin, Pennsylvania, a 16-year-old boy who took a Percocet, fentanyl Percocet counterfeit pill that was given to him by a 23-year-old girl he worked with at McDonald's, and he's being buried 2 days from now. I deal with this every single day, 7 days a week. How do I deal with it? God, and I have a purpose in my life. And I think we've got to talk to kids about purpose, because if they really start to look for and discover their purpose, they'll discover their connection. And connection is the answer to addiction. Connection is the answer to loneliness. Connection is the answer to that self-medication need that kids are looking for when dealing with their trauma. We've got to talk about purpose. We've got to talk to prisoners about purpose, addicts about purpose. And America wants to move in this other direction about enabling addicts and medication-assisted treatment and legalizing drugs and saying abstinence doesn't work. You can swing that pendulum over there all you want, but I can promise you one thing: it's not going to solve the problem. It's exacerbating the problem, and it's going to make the problem worse. So if you believe that the war on drugs, which never really happened, it was a war on drug addicts, if you believe that didn't work, okay, I'm with you. But swinging the pendulum over, legalizing drugs and enabling addicts to continue to use drugs, giving them safe places to shoot their heroin, it's not going to work. We need better solutions, and we've got to come together. I'm not saying medication-assisted treatment is not a path, but it's not a destination. It's a journey, but it's not a destination. So we've got to come together, and we've got to reach these kids. We've got to show them purpose. We've got to show them God, and we've got to prevent them from traveling down this path that we traveled.
Mm. Yeah, well, thanks for sharing all of that. That's a lot for people to really take in and absorb, because they don't get to see that. And I watch your Facebook lives, man, and I watch what you're doing and how you're out there, and you're a passionate guy. You wear your emotions on your sleeve, and you shared some pretty horrendous stories that have really impacted you and the communities that you're a part of. And so I just want to applaud you as a colleague in the field, and I see all you do, and I know that God's blessing everything that you're doing. And I'm just excited to have you as part of this, because it gives people a new flavor and a new perspective. And so I just want to say thanks for taking some time today. And is there anything else you kind of want to share with us? I know you have a lot that's happening, but anything else you want to share with our audience today before we kind of wrap up?
Well, some states are going to send their kids back to school. They're going to open up schools normally. Some states are not going to do it at all. They're going to distance learning, which makes no sense for kids. Distance learning with their kids. And then some are going to do kind of a combination, right? We've had a 6-month summer break by the time school starts, and the academic regression of kids is going to be massive, right? But also the trauma on these kids. And so it's more important than ever for parents to talk to their kids. So we produced a book called Table Talks and Dashboard Conversations, and it's on our website. It's also on Amazon. It's only $20, and it's a year of conversations that you need to have with your kids relevant to today's current trends. So it's very, very, very pertinent, current, and relevant. Table Talks and Dashboard Conversations. It's on our website, steeredstraight.org, or you could order it on Amazon. And it's going to give you all the conversations that you need for the next year to talk to your kids. Please, please, please understand that these kids are suffering, some a little bit, some a lot. We are going to see suicide continue to skyrocket, and this is affecting every racial demographic, every socioeconomic family demographic. Please look at this book. We've got anxiety curriculum on our website. We've got another curriculum for kids called Success for Teens. I don't just want to tell people what the problem is. I want to provide solutions. So share recoveryarmy.com with people so people can watch stories of hope. Share steeredstraight.org with people so people can find, real relevant and pertinent and valid resources. And if you can support Steered Straight, that would be awesome. Steeredstraight.org. I'm so grateful for any help that you can provide.
Yeah, well, you're an amazing trooper. You are a warrior, Michael, and thank you for all that you do. And we're here to support you, man. So you've got people behind you there. In fact, when we get off this, I'm actually going to make a donation to you today just to kind of step forward and take that action, which I haven't done yet, but I'm going to do that.
Thank you.
Just to, make myself accountable. Everyone's heard that now. So, but I'm grateful for you. Thanks for joining us on the Art of Intervention Project Summit, man. And good luck in Virginia, where you are, in your thrift store and everything you're doing. So keep up the great work.
Thank you.